companion, his kunya, his agnonym, is Abu Hamza. It is said in one narration, in one report, that the Prophet ﷺ gave him this kunya, Abu Hamza. But it's not agreed upon thing, but some say the Prophet ﷺ gave him this kunya. His real name was Anas bin Malik, and he was a resident of Medina. He was from one of the two main tribes of Medina. And his mother, Sulaym, radiallahu anha, when the Prophet ﷺ came to Medina from Makkah, she came to the Prophet ﷺ with her son, who it is said was round about 10 or slightly younger than 10. So let's just say he's 10 years old. So Anas radiallahu anhu is a young boy, 10 years old. And she said, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is my son. I would like you to accept him as your khadim, as your helper, your servant, the one who does khidmah, service to you. And the Prophet ﷺ accepted him as his khadim. And she said, I would like you to make dua for him, supplicate for him, which he did. And he made a supplication, word to the effect of, if I can just find it in my notes, Allahumma akthir malahu wa waladahu wa atila umarahu. Oh Allah, increase him in wealth and in children and prolong his life. That's authentically reported. There is an addition to that, and forgive him his sins and enter him into paradise. There's also a narration that says, and forgive him his sins and enter him into paradise. So Allah increase him in wealth, in progeny, in children, in the length of his life, and forgive him his sins and enter him into paradise. And he serves the Prophet ﷺ by his own admission in Sahih al-Bukhari. Anas radiallahu anhu says, I served the Prophet ﷺ for 10 years, and never did I hear him say about anything that, why didn't you do such and such? Or why did you do such and such? And he never scolded me, he never cursed me, he never beat me. And in one narration, if he didn't like something, the signs of displeasure could be seen on his face. SubhanAllah. So there's no wagging fingers, shouting as we tend to do. It was just, mashallah, there's just a beautiful way of even showing your displeasure at something. Just let the face mildly tell you, and if you're perceptive enough, you get the point. And if a person's perceptive enough, they get the point. So Anas radiallahu anhu says that about himself, that I served him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Prophet ﷺ, for 10 years, and he didn't shout at me, didn't beat me, didn't scold me, didn't curse me, didn't tell me why didn't I do this, why did I do that. But of course, it didn't mean that he just let the khadim do what he wants. But there's a way of getting the best out of people. And when we look into one of the remarkable things, and it really shouldn't be remarkable if we think that this is a man, khayru khalqillah, the best of Allah's creation, who is instructed from above the heavens. Okay, so but in the other sense, it's remarkable just to see how the Prophet ﷺ would interact with people. And in today's discussion, we'll see a few examples which, in one sense, should really wow our minds. Say, SubhanAllah, is that how he dealt with people? To get them to understand and see good and to leave evil. And it becomes a lesson for us to learn that in our zeal for wanting to practice Islam and wanting other people to be upon khair and goodness and practice, we must be careful that our zeal doesn't morph into telling people off and wagging our fingers at them as the norm to correct people, because quite often hearts don't respond to that kind of harsh message. And we seem to justify ourselves by, well, the more quote-unquote practicing I am, the more I have a right to shout at people, okay? Or the more practicing the proof of my commitment to Islam is the harsher I can be. The harsher I can be, the more it's a proof that, mashallah, I'm on the deen. Look at my harshness. Look how I froth at the mouth. But actually, when we look back to the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and his seerah, we find nothing of that at all. When we do find hardness and strictness, it's more often than not in jihad, be safe, it's in battles and armed combat, as opposed to just daily discourse. And that doesn't exclude the fact that when he sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to give khutbahs, his voice would be raised and his eyes would redden, as if he was warning against an imminent enemy behind him. Because that's a khutbah, and it's kind of, unless you're kind of old school Gujarati Indian kind of thing, then most people expect a fiery khutbah. Did I ever tell you the story when I went to the United States? Did I ever mention that in one of the classes? Around in 1999, I think it was, in 1999 or thereabouts, I got invited to the States. And I've been invited many a time to give a talk, but I always said no. Always because of my perception of Americans in the United States. But anyway, some people were on at me for a few years, so I thought, let me go. So I went to Houston, Texas. And you know, the main thing I came back with from that trip was the American public are three things. The American public are generally ignorant, okay, and that's because if you watch their news, when it comes to the, you know, and they've only got like 20 minutes, 30 minutes for the news or whatever, like about 15 minutes is taken up with the weather in the 52 different states, right? When you get 52 different weathers in 52 different states, you only got about 3 or 4 minutes for news. Then when you look at their best newspapers are not quite our tabloids, like our daily, you know, Mirror, The Sun, but they're certainly nowhere near your broadsheets, like the Times or the Independent or the Guardian or whatever. There's something kind of in between, kind of easygoing news, but not too trashy, like the tabloids. That's the first thing that I found. The second thing is they're really nice people. Okay, a post 9/11 world, they're just really nice. They're always, you know, they're talking to you as if they know you. And the thing about being an Englishman is like, it's like, please don't talk to me too long because I don't want to be left alone. That's how I felt. But they're so nice. They just come up to you in the middle of nowhere, okay, as if they've known you for 1,000 years. And the third thing is real serious diet issues. I walked into like a Starbucks or one of those coffee places for the first time because I always avoided them in this country for whatever reason. I'm not really a tea or coffee drinker. And I was going to my talk and I was really late, couldn't have breakfast at the hotel. So they said, oh, round the corner, coffee place. So I just walked into, like you'd walk into a cafe. And I just asked, can I have a cup of tea, please? And I was so tired, I said, can I have a cup of tea, please? And I was just going to turn to sit down on the table and then hopefully she would have served me. She goes, oh, sir, what tea? And I think, in my mind, I'm thinking, what do you mean, what tea? You know, tea is tea, right? You go to a cafe, you're not going to ask what tea. They're just going to give you tea. They said, would you like this, oh great, this, and all these kind of, and they had a stream of tea bags that you're supposed to pick and give it to the lady over the counter. So that took me by surprise, and I'm trying to find like an English breakfast, normal kind of PG Thai food tea bag kind of tea. I got one, I thought, I'm done that. And then I went to sit on this table that he said, sir, what size? And again, he's like, whoa, what's going on there? What size? So what size do you have? It ranged from small, which was like, you know, when you go to one of these cinemas, right, and you ask for a large, you know, Coca-Cola, and they give it to you. That was the small, right? And then the large was like a Kentucky Fried Bucket kind of thing, right? So people really drink this. Okay, they drink from this. And then I thought I better stay because she had another 4 or 5 questions. This was probably a prelude to the interrogations Muslims would face after 9/11. But this was about tea. So it was a nice place. But anyway, I went into this, I did 2 khutbahs there, 2 Fridays. So the first Friday, I just gave my normal khutbah. And it's kind of fiery, as few of you might know. And then at the end, many people cried, you know, thank me, mashallah, and it was really nice discussing. But I had this row of elders, there must have been 11, 12, and they said, beta, son, you know, next time if you come back, can you just lower your voice, but we don't like this type of khutbah. The young people liked it, but these elders didn't like it. And then I found out in discussion, because I was apologizing and really sorry, because, you know, that's why we have a mic. Right? So we don't have to shout. And I was trying to explain that the Prophet will raise his voice and become, but they weren't kind of having that. Anyway, in my inquiry, finding out, it turned out that nearly all of them are from Gujarat, India. And I thought, you know, I was brought up in a masjid which very much was like Gujarati kind of thing, and yeah, they are pretty soft-spoken. Anyway, next week, I went to another masjid, and as soon as I got on the member, I looked, and they're all Asian faces. I thought, won't make the same mistake. So I was, mashallah, I was in Gujarati mode. I'm not Gujarati, I was like, alhamdulillah, we have to do this. And I was really calm, mashallah. I thought, mashallah, this will appease the ears of the elders. At the end, people congratulate me, and then there was this queue of elders. And they said, beta, normally we have some josh, we have some kind of fieriness in our khutbahs. We don't have it very bland or whatever. And when in discussion of why I did that, because last week I was in this masjid, it turned out that they're all from Pakistan. There you have it. Just a little division, okay, 1947, one country, but that division, it says it all really. Okay, the fieriness and the laid-backness. And you can actually see that. You can actually see that. There's a story, I'm on a sidetrack now. Imam Malik radiallahu anhu was once asked, why is it that Ahlul Makkah, the people of Makkah, tend to have harder hearts, and the people of Medina tend to have softer hearts? Okay, relatively speaking. That's not to say that they're hard-hearted, but they have harder hearts than the people of Makkah. Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala says, as for the people of Makkah, they threw out their prophet. As for the people of Medina, they invited him in. Hence, the attitudes count for the hearts. And so you'll actually find that people can have traits which other peoples don't necessarily have. Anyway, let's go back to this. I can't remember how I drifted. Yes, the fact that how the Prophet would treat people. Anas radiallahu anhu, he served the Prophet for 10 years. He passed away. Anas radiallahu anhu, the dua of the Prophet gets fulfilled because Anas has about 120 children and grandchildren. Okay, he lives to 90 years old. Okay, he dies in the year 103 Hijrah or 108 Hijrah. He's the last of the Sahaba to die in Basra. Okay, because he went after the Prophet passed away. He got sent to Damascus, and then from Damascus, Syria, Damascus, he went and he lived in Basra. As he got old, his eyes failed. He relates an incredible amount of hadith. He's about the third or fourth prolific hadith narrator. 2,286 hadiths are found in our canonical collections from him. He dies at the year 90 in the year 103, 108 Hijrah, with 120 odd children and grandchildren, incredibly wealthy. Prophet made dua for that, long age. So, inshallah, we have no doubt that the two other parts of the Prophet's dua, that may Allah forgive him his sins and enter into paradise, is also there as well, inshallah ta'ala. Okay. Yeah, so, no, sorry, I got it the other way around. He died in the year 90 Hijrah, and his age was 103. Not his age was 90, he died in 100. He's 103 years old, and he died in 90 Hijrah. Okay, so the hadith, let's go to the hadith. لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. None of you, if I literally translate this word for word, لا يؤمن, none of you have iman, none of you believe, or لا يؤمن أحدكم, none of you believe or have iman, حتى يحب لأخيه, until you love for your brother, ما يحب لنفسه, until that which you love for yourself. None of you have iman. But here, this statement, لا يؤمن أحدكم, none of you have iman, is not talking about negating faith or iman totally from the heart. It's negating kamilul iman, the perfection of faith. Quite often when we hear the Prophet ﷺ say words like this, la yu'minu, okay, a person doesn't have iman, it doesn't mean that a person has no iman such that they are a kafir, a non-Muslim. It means that they don't have the perfect level of faith. It's a bit like, why? Because we know from another hadith, for example, the Prophet ﷺ says, similar to this, he says in the Musnad of Ahmad, لا يبلغ عبد حقيقة الإيمان حتى يحب للناس ما يحب لنفسه من الخير. لا يبلغ عبد حقيقة الإيمان. A person will not reach the reality, the true reality of faith. So he will reach some level of faith, but he won't reach the true reality of faith until he loves for people what he loves for himself of the good. So loving for others what we would love for ourselves, wishing for others which we would wish for ourselves, is an obligatory part of faith, but in the absence of it, our faith is defective, not nullified or missing. That's really, really important to know. Why? Because if we just pick up this hadith, okay, and read it in Arabic without a proper understanding, لا يؤمن أحدكم, he's not a person of Iman. Well, if he's not a person of Iman, he's a person of Kufr. There's nothing in between. There's no manzila bayna manzilatayn. There's no station in between the two stations. Either a person is a Muslim or a person is not a Muslim, a kafir. Okay, there's not, he's half Muslim, half kafir. It's no. He's either a Muslim, even if he has many, many sins and many, many atrocities, or he's a non-Muslim, even if he is a very nice, kind, charitable person, but he has no Iman. That's the only two states that a human being can be in, Iman or Kufr. Okay? So when لا يؤمن أحدكم doesn't mean that there is no Iman at all. It means there's naqisul Iman, there's a deficiency of faith. There's not kamalul Iman, perfection of faith. And that's a bit like the Prophet ﷺ saying, لا يؤمن من لا يعمل جاره. That a person doesn't have faith until his neighbour is safe from his harms. Again, a person doesn't have true reality of faith if his neighbour is not safe from his harm. Not that he's not a Muslim. Or, for example, لا يزني الزاني حين يزني وهو مؤمن. A fornicator, someone who does zina, an adulterer or fornicator, an adulterer, whilst he's committing adultery, is not a mu'min, doesn't have iman, meaning doesn't have kamal al-iman. He doesn't have the perfection, the depth of faith. Why? Because he's actually engrossed in a sin. But it doesn't mean he doesn't have faith at all. And he's still a Muslim, but committing a major sin for which they must stop, desist, make tawbah. Okay? And you'll find a number of hadiths like this. La yu'minu, or that person doesn't have faith, or none of you have faith. We must understand them, not according to this black and white reading of I can understand the hadith myself, but actually have to understand them according to the scholarly understanding. In fact, because such hadiths were not understood correctly. The very first schism in Islam, the very first schism and sect arose in the beginning of Ali radiallahu anhu's caliphate, and they were called the Khawarij. And the Prophet ﷺ did prophesy about them. He said, Al-Khawarij kilabun nar, the Khawarij are the dogs of hellfire. And the thing that they had there is that they believed that if a Muslim committed a major sin, he stole, he drank, he disobeyed his parents, he missed prayers or fasting, or he committed adultery and fornication, any of the kaba'ir, major sins, he backbited, he slandered, he lied, then that person becomes a kafir. But the Sahaba and the people of Sunnah who followed their way, they said no. That person is a Muslim with deficient faith. He is a sinful Muslim, but a Muslim nonetheless, who is obligated to do tawbah, obligated to repent. And because the Khawarij believed that someone who commits major sins, then they would go around killing people who they believed were committing major sins, and in some cases they were, but they didn't deserve to die. And some cases, well, in my opinion, you're committing a major sin, therefore your blood is halal. And by that way, a number of the Khawarij killed a number of the Sahaba because of this deviant belief. The difficulty about it is that the Prophet ﷺ said, these type of people, with their black and white mentality, will continue to be in this ummah until the last of them fights alongside the Antichrist. And yet against the Muslims, alongside Masih al-Dajjal. And the Prophet ﷺ said, whenever they raise their heads, okay, and they would raise their ugly heads, we've been told, whenever they raise their heads, the people of truth would recognize them and put them down. And whenever they raise their heads, they would be recognized and be put down whenever they raise. And he said that many a time, meaning throughout Islamic history, they will always rise. Okay, so when you get people who generally have an attitude that all scholars are deviant, misguided, worldly people, which then you do that to all scholars, and who have you got left? You've got idiots like us, who've got no religious knowledge, and we're giving fatwas, right? Yesterday I was in the clubs, today I'm a mufti, right? And I still don't know how to recite Surah Fatiha properly, according to the rules of Tajweed, yet here we are giving all fatwas, okay? Because of those hadith, we know that today's situation whereby you get people who are going to just cause schism and anarchy in a country because they have a grievance with government, even if their grievance is right, but hey, let's overthrow the government. The Muslim government, yeah. Or, well, he's committed a sin, therefore he's outside the religion. Or any other kind of black and white attitude, harsh, intolerant black and white attitude, which doesn't have the balance and the nuance that the ulama, the scholars have had all the way back to the Sahaba, radiallahu anhum ajma'in, then we have them abounding. We have them abounding in this, okay? And if you want to get into names, if it's beneficial, we could do that later, but in principle, we should just know that that's not the way. So that's the first thing we learn from this hadith. La yu'minu doesn't negate faith entirely, it's just negating the perfection of faith, meaning that this wishing for our brother that which we wish for ourselves is a must. We should do that. If we don't do that, we still have faith, iman, still Muslim, but we've neglected a duty, and we've fallen below the haqiqat iman, the true faith that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes us to have. Is that first point clear? Because that point is an aqidah point, a point of theology. So, for example, when we see someone and they don't judge by the judgment of Allah, even though Allah says in the Quran, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. Whoever doesn't judge by what Allah has sent down or what Allah has revealed, أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْكَافِرُونَ, they are unbelievers. And then you see someone, oh, he didn't judge with the judgment of Allah. Normally we point our fingers to rulers. Oh, he's judged with other than judgment of Allah, he must be a kafir. Well, no. If a person judges with the judgment of Allah, against the judgment of Allah, believing that he's doing something haram, that person is a Muslim sinner. And that rule, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ, is not just for the rulers, it's for the ruled over as well. So, for example, if you see someone in a family, like the father, and he's taking usury, riba, he's judging with other than the judgment of Allah. If you see a son disobeying the parents, he's judging with other than the judgment of Allah. If you see a daughter backbiting or slandering, she's judging with other than the judgment of Allah. If you see a wife harboring jealousy without justification against another Muslim, she's judging with other than the judgment of Allah. But none of them are kafirs. They're all sinners as long as they believe what they're doing is wrong. But the Khawarij and the Khariji type of people get fixated on rulers, as if changing the ruler would always change the situation. As if Allah said in the Quran, change your ruler and all will be alright. No, Allah says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Never does Allah change the condition of a people until they change themselves. Not until they change their rulers. And so there is this incident. And I'm not saying that a good ruler never influences people, or a ruler never influences people. In the olden days, quite often, a ruler could influence the whole people. If he becomes a particular religion, you might find that the majority of the people become that particular religion, and vice versa. But to think that, yes, actually change is just with the ruler is actually something that actually goes against the Quran itself. The Quran talks about changing ourselves. There is an incident that is reported about Ali radiallahu anhu, that a man came to Ali radiallahu anhu and said, you know, when Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhu were ruling us, we had stability, dignity, and we were making jihad and conquering frontiers and whatever. And then as soon as you came to power, we had all this schism and internal fighting and. And he was saying it in a very condescending way. So he said, why is this? Why when they were ruling is like this, and when you're ruling is all gone pear-shaped? Why? So Ali radiallahu anhu, being in Sahabi, son-in-law of the Prophet ﷺ, one of the greatest scholars from the Sahaba, he says, as for the rulers like Abu Bakr and Umar, men of their caliber were ruling over men of my caliber. But as for me, men of my caliber have to rule over people like you. Because the rule makes a huge difference. All these oppressive, tyrannical rulers that the Muslim Ummah, especially in the 20th century and to some degree at the beginning of the 21st century, that we've had our fair share of, when did they stop you praying in your house? They may have stopped 2 or 3 people praying in, the Assad family have had a track record, not just son. Son is kind of just the tip of the iceberg, although it's a civil war. Father was just as brutal in that sense, but no civil war, for various reasons. And you couldn't, sometimes you couldn't grow your beard, 2 or 3 couldn't congregate in a mosque without the secret police. And there are other reasons to it as well, because there had always been people wanting to overthrow the government, and whenever a king feels that he's going to be overthrown, he's always going to tighten up security and become harsh. But there's a mixture of things. But point being is, but who stops people praying in their house? And yet, what I'm trying to say is, we can blame the rulers for stopping us doing certain things, but we couldn't. Did they force us to lie? Did they force us to disobey our parents? Did they force us not to read Quran? No, all of these things we choose to do. So when we choose to be disobedient, okay, think about it. In the modern world, and this is just a thought, Pakistan as a region, as a country, it has a huge population. So it's not in short of labour. Pakistanis are either highly intelligent, okay, that's why you will find them, whether especially in the medical industry in the United States, you take Pakistanis away, there's no medical profession in the United States, okay, or they're not very educated because they come from some of the village countries. So they have manpower, they have intelligence as well, okay. They have minerals, they have oil, they have natural resources in quite an abundance. Their land, most of their land, unlike Bangladesh, is fertile land to grow upon. They don't have these major floods coming in on regular basis like, say, Bangladesh did or does. They have, from the worldly point of view, everything has become really advanced, self-sufficient, and yet it's a country with the deepest political schisms. A great lack of education across the country. Hardly any of those resources are being tapped into for the benefit of the population. And it's compared to its neighbour, India, and compared to a few other countries in Southeast Asia, some of the, Japan and Taiwan, whatever, it's backwards. Why should it be like that? You can go and blame the rulers from the military rulers, from Zia before, and from corrupt rulers, fine, but is it just the rulers? إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Pakistan is one of the great tragedies, Muslim tragedies of the modern era, because it's not like Mauritania, Muslim country, West Africa, all desert, hardly any minerals, natural resources, no oil, not much of a population, and even if there is, not much land to grow food on because much of it is desert. Then you can think, okay, it being a country that is technologically or materially backwards, it makes sense. Pakistan doesn't really have that excuse. Okay, so it needs to be thought out. And all of these political pointing fingers, 1948 onwards, where has it actually got the nation? It might be the case, I'm just guessing, that Muslims of Pakistan might have to look inwardly in themselves and see, hold on a minute, Is there some kind of disconnect? And that's not to say that outside forces aren't interfering with that country, including their neighbour. But we won't say much about that because there's a new President Prime Minister of the country and we're trying to make relationships, and I'm not going to stir up anything here from Hamburg. Okay, so let's look at this hadith a bit more in detail. لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. None of you truly believes until you love for your brother that which you love for yourself, or you wish for your brother, desire for your brother that which you desire for yourself. The first thing it reminds us of is having a clean heart towards other Muslims. I can't begin to wish well for my brother or sister Muslim if I have in my heart rancor, hatred, ill will, jealousy, envy, spite, malice against them. All of which are, nearly all of which are major sins, by the way, of the heart. Nearly all of which, if not all of which, are major sins. Okay? So I need to have a clean heart towards Muslim brothers and sisters. Especially since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes us in the Quran, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ. Indeed, the believers are but brothers. And especially since the Prophet ﷺ described us as a single ummah, supporting each other as bricks make up a strong wall. The example of the believer, the Prophet ﷺ said in the Hadith in Sahih Muslim, the example of believers in their love, compassion and tenderness to each other is the example of a body. When one part of the body suffers, when one part of the body aches, all of the body suffers in sleeplessness and fever. And when one part of the body hurts, is made to hurt, the rest of the body feels it, because that's how we're connected as brothers, sisters in an ummah. What binds us is ikhwatul imaniyya, the brotherhood based upon faith, upon religion, upon iman, not upon where I was born or the colour of my skin or whatever it be, so that we feel and empathise with each other. So that's the first thing. It reminds us to cleanse our heart and remove it of these ugly traits that despoil and corrupt and pollute our hearts. Secondly, none of you reaches haqiqatul iman. The reality of faith tells us that according to the majority opinion in Aqidah, iman, faith, increases and decreases. Iman can be stronger sometimes and can be weaker sometimes. Iman, they say, Iman, qawlun wa amal, yazidu wa yanqus. Faith is both speech and action, and it increases and decreases. And even if we didn't know that, and even if we didn't know some of the verses in the Quran which speak about increasing Iman and the believers, they were increasing Iman when such and such happened, we each experience that in our life. That some days our faith feels stronger than at other days. In some times and in some situations, around some people, in some particular places, our Iman feels stronger than it does in other places and other situations. So it's something that we know through text, and it's something that we experience. And the idea is that we need to have a level of Iman which is consistent and fulfilling the obligatory duties demanded by faith. If it doesn't do anything more than that, then we fulfill the obligatory level of Iman, of faith. But if it falls below that, then that's a serious problem. And how do we know that? By knowing what are the duties that are obligatory upon us, and what are the duties which are recommended. What are the duties which is haram for us to do, and what are the duties which are, it's better that we leave because that thing is makruh, is disliked. So it's better you leave, but if you don't leave it, you're not sinful. Then we can begin to deal with having the obligatory level of Iman. That's the second thing, that Iman yazidu bi-ta'a wa yanqus bil-ma'siyah. Faith increases with obedience to Allah and decreases with sins and disobedience. So if I want to ask myself, how do I increase my faith? Then as a rule of thumb, acts of obedience. Of course, some acts of obedience and some acts of righteousness have a profounder effect in increasing Iman than others. Okay? That's the second thing. The third thing is the explicit meaning of this hadith: wish for your brother that which you wish for yourself. Notice, Notice how it's not biblical. Biblical, you have a kind of a statement, word to the effect that says basically that you're not truly a Christian believer unless you give to your Christian brother or sister, give to your brother that which you have for yourself. This is not saying that. The Prophet didn't say that. Wish for your brother, love for your brother that which you love for yourself. Why? Because doing the other thing is very impractical at every time. Alhamdulillah, I saved up 1 year to buy this really good car within my means. Now I've got it, let's just say, I don't know, like 15, 18, 20,000 pounds. Then, if it now means that I have an obligation to give it to my Muslim brother, but then I have many Muslim brothers, do I have to now give each of them a 20k car? Khalas, it's impossible. But as I wish that I have a good vehicle to take me from A to B, I wish for my brothers to have a good vehicle. I pray that he gets rid of his Skoda, Allah gets rid of his Skoda and gives him a decent car. Right? Apologies to those who have Skodas. So the idea is to wish for your brother. Why? Because you're concerned with that Muslim's welfare as if it was your own self. As if it's with your own self. And here is the beauty. See, because we don't read the Quran very much, and certainly we don't read it to understand, if only we did, we'd come across so many verses which will say, and I'm doing the English of this just to save time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say something like, and do not expel yourselves from your homes. That's how the Arabic goes. Do not expel yourselves. Even though its meaning is, do not expel your brothers from their homes. Don't kick them out for whatever reasons. It's about kick them out of the land. And this is not the only place in the Quran where the word yourselves means other people, your Muslim brothers. There are a number of places where Allah uses that type of language. And the reason why is Allah wants us to come to that reality that my Muslim brothers are like myself. What gives me joy, I want to share that joy with them. If they have sorrow, I need to feel that sorrow of theirs. Just imagine if we just started thinking like that. How many of the problems between individuals, between blood brothers and sisters, between parents and children, between relatives, between even countries or cities would just dissipate. And if we looked into our own lives, we might find that the problems that I have with Muslims, a Muslim brother, or if I just step back and thought, hold on a minute, how would I like to be? Let me see it from their point of view. Let me feel it and see it and empathise from their point of view. It could fix so many things. And so here, right in the beginning, the Prophet is telling us this is the way to think. Of course, if that's the explicit meaning, desire for your brother, wish for your brother, love for your brother, that which you love for yourself from the good, then the opposite applies. What you hate for yourself, hate for your brother. Really? Okay. I hate that I don't get good sleep, so let me make sure that I don't kind of speak loudly, rev my car on a motorbike engine, and it's past 9 o'clock, 9:30, 10, or whatever time it is that people could go to sleep, and I'm going to be disturbing, say, my Muslim brothers or sisters. Okay. Someone says something to me about a Muslim, let's say in this community, well, let me just think first and foremost, is it true? Is it true? إن جاء يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن جاءكم فاسق بنبأ فتبينوا. The Quran says, oh, you believe? When a wicked person comes to you with some news, ascertain its truthfulness. Work out if it's true or not. But even if I didn't do that, just the issue, how would I feel if this guy was whispering to someone else in someone else's ear about me? Well, if I know that I won't like that, then I shouldn't like it for my Muslim brother. Is that clear? We need to really internalize that. So that's another thing. Wish for your brother that which you wish for yourself. Examples. there is a hadith in the Sunan al-Kubra of Bayhaqi, and there is some weakness in its chain. So it's not completely fabricated, but it's not rigorously authentic. So we'll take it with a pinch of salt, and we'll say the meaning is correct, even if the words weren't actually said like this. So the narration says, a man came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, Ya Rasulullah ﷺ, as a Muslim, just give me permission to commit zina. And the Prophet ﷺ just kind of turned away. So he said, Ya Rasulullah, he came saying, just give me permission. So the Prophet ﷺ said to him, would you ever wish, because what he's saying is, give me permission to sleep with a girl, a lady, okay? So he said, would you wish that upon your own daughter? He said, never. He said that, would you wish that upon your own sister? He said, never. He said that, would you wish that upon your own wife or mother? He said, never. So the Prophet ﷺ said to him, wish for your brother that which you wish for yourself. Meaning, whoever you're going to illegitimately sleep with, she is someone's wife, someone's daughter, someone's sister. Wish for your brother that which you wish for yourself. But notice how, because your instant reaction is if someone comes to you and say, you think, if someone said that to us, bro, I'm going to slap you in a minute, right? Don't ask some stupid questions. But he starts to kind of entertains him. He doesn't push him away. He just makes him morally conscious of what he's asking for. So that he has some kind of moral, spiritual accountability. He's trying to make him think as a spiritual, moral creature. He doesn't just want to give him fatwas. Oh, zina is haram, which would have done the job probably. But he wants him to think that, okay, yes, fatwa is one thing, but actually, there are many issues in life in which the fatwa won't be there, or it's not kind of the right thing. I mean, and I always give this example, and I gave it last week, someone comes knocking on your house, right, he's a bit of a dodgy character, a bit of a Del boy in action, and he's looking here and there, and he's got one of those Samsung Plasma smart TVs, okay, £1,000 in curries, right, and he's saying, look, I'll give it to you for 100 quid. Right? And he's got his friend in the car as a lookout as well. You're not going to say, well, let me dial a mufti, dial a fatwa to see, can I do, goods from Hookie Street, and a bit dodgy. Your moral conscience will say that, you know what, even Tesco's don't give this kind of bargain. Right? How is this guy doing? It's definitely got to be dodgy. And dodgy things are just haram. So we need to learn to be morally, spiritually regulating ourselves. Not forever that I am a fatwa person. Fatwas are really important. Fatwas are really important. But they won't count for most of our lives. And the Prophet never wanted it to count for most of our lives. Because he wanted us to be a morally regulating community. As we're growing up and our parents say pray, yes, we could say we prayed in the room. Parents won't know any better, but Allah is watching. To have that connection. So that we'll be morally... there's a 10 quid on the floor, it doesn't belong to me, I found it on the street. Can keep it in my pocket. Who's going to know? Maybe there might be some CCTV cameras, but if there isn't, who's going to know? But Allah is watching. It's not the right thing to do. If we don't inculcate these things in ourselves, what we get, subhanAllah, we get really weird things, and so much, I can't go into it because it can be depressing. So that was an example of wishing for your brother. There is a verse in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the quality of ithar. Ithar. Can you remember the verse in just before Surah Saf? Tu'thiruna. I can't remember how the verse goes now. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the believers. He says, they tu'thirun, they prefer the needs of others. They prefer others over their own selves, even though khasasa, even though poverty is their lot. Even though they themselves are the most needy of food, of money, or whatever, they're still going to give it to others. And our scholars, and Mufassirun, the people of Tafsir say, this verse, which I've only quoted the mafhum of, it's in the one surah before Surah Saf, verse 9. The reason, the sabab al-nuzul, the reason why this verse came down, they say is one of two reasons. The first is that some Sahabi finally got some good meat. And he said, oh, let me not eat this. Let me give it to someone who is more needy. And he gave it. And that someone said, even though I am a bit hungry, I know a person who is more hungry. And the narration says it went round to 7 houses until the 7th household said, let me give it to someone who's more needy. And it went back to the first household. And then Allah revealed the verse about the quality of the believers, that they prefer others over their own selves even though they're needy. The other reason why they say this verse was revealed goes back to a hadith in Sahih Bukhari. One man came into the masjid and you could see that this man was on the brink of starvation. And the Prophet sent a message to his wives saying, have any of my household got food for him? And they all said they had. They had all not, because the Prophet would go days without food and the household would do that. So the Prophet made an announcement in the masjid. Who will take this man for a night and feed him? And so someone put up their hand. And so this person put up his hand. He took this starving man to the house, and it was, by that time it was nightfall. He came into the house, and the wife said that actually, though the kids had kind of eaten, the only food left is for the children. We've got no other food except for the kids, for our children. So the man said, look, he's starving. And so they agreed that food should be given to him rather than the children. So the children weren't on the brink of starvation. So they said they put the children to bed. And then they made this plan, it's inside Bukhari, that they would tell him that they don't have light, so we're going to have to eat in the dark. And by that way, they could put the proper food in front of him, and they could sit on the other side and pretend that they're eating, so that he wouldn't feel aggrieved. And that's exactly what they did. They pretended to eat, whilst he actually ate, even though they were poor and needy. And Allah Jalla wa Ala revealed this verse. This is going higher than what this hadith is saying. This hadith is saying, none of you truly believes unless he wishes for his brother that which he wishes for himself. Ithar, one of the great virtues, one of the great sunnahs that has been lost, is really the mark of a higher believer. Preferring the needs of others over my own needs, even though I do have needs. It's not such that let me prefer, I'm on the brink of dying of thirst. In 20 seconds I'll die of thirst if I don't have a drop of water, and I say, oh, you have that drop of water, whereas you're not going to die of thirst, and then I kill myself. It's not that irresponsibility, but I am incredibly thirsty. But I see you're incredibly thirsty as well. I'm just going to prefer your need over the other. To do that is from the higher virtues, not an obligation. As you can see, it's kind of difficult. But that we should aspire to that. Set our goal on being people like that. Because as much as Islam is doing the right thing for the right reason, doing the right thing for the right reason. What's the right reason? Why do we do the right things? For whose sake? Allah's. So as much as Islam is about doing the right things, doing acts of obedience, acts of worship, doing the right things for the right reason, and Allah, Islam is also about doing the right things and trying to be right in the inside too. So that our Islam is not just external. Okay. And it doesn't matter if, I haven't got much Islam inside. It's still all outward, but I want to be a better person inside, and that's what I'm going to make my life's mission. That's brilliant. Because we all take time to flower, grow and develop it, isn't it? The problem is when I just think, I look the part, right? So forget about changing on the inside. So what it's actually doing, you get a rotten wall, rising damp and all that, and you just paint it with a new gloss of Dulux. But it's still stinking behind it. Everybody can smell it, that staleness. But, khushbu, lovely. No. And that's how sometimes people perceive us as Muslims. Not because they're Islamophobic, some of them are, and you can't do anything about that. Not because they're right-wing ideal, some of them are, and you can't do much about that. Although sandwiches in a good game of football, I heard, helps. But because they see hypocrisy. Oh, so you people really, why do you fast in Ramadan? Oh, because you see, you know, if you do what we do, then you feel for the poor in Ramadan. Really? Then how come you eat more food in Ramadan than you do outside of Ramadan? Which is the kind of established statistic all around the world for Muslims. How come we eat more food in Ramadan than not? And you know what? I get angry with my wife. She's not making the Ramadan food, the Ramadan sharbat. Whoa! Yeah, this is pressure on. You know, I'm looking at the clock and I'm looking at the moon, right? Okay, for Ramadan to cook in because it's going to be Ramadan special, right? And my wife is looking at the clock and looking at the moon, petrified, thinking, oh my gosh, it's going to be slave labor for the next 30 days. Otherwise, it's going to bring around all the bros, and they all want Ramadan dinners and Ramadan sharbat, and just raising and whatever. It's Ramadan for wives too, you know. But wish for your brother, including wish for your wife, and wish for the people back home. Okay. Quite often, this is what a lot of parents say. Okay. Quite often, they don't mind their sons and daughters getting religious and going to circles and going to courses and learning knowledge and whatever. But they would like to see some of their Islam helpful towards them. How is it that my daughter, my son is getting really, really religious and we don't see him anymore, and even the once a week dishes that he used to do or she used to do, don't even do that more because we're studying some Sharia. Yeah, but you know, studying Sharia kind of doesn't alleviate us doing service to our parents. Studying Sharia doesn't have that priority as an individual fardul ain as khidmah to parents, service to parents. But yes, if intelligent people can study Sharia and fiqh and aqeedah and tafsir, bismillah, do so. Why? Because Islam wants to make us men. Well, by men, I don't mean gender men and women. Wants to raise us, our human standard. Wants us to see the world and people in a different way. That each person is God's creature with the potential to be a Muslim. And so that brings us on to the second but last point. None of you truly believes until he wishes for his brother, akhi. Is this brother Muslim, or is his brother as in non-Muslims as well? Blood brother, or just bro, as in a non-Muslim? The vast majority of our scholars say it means Muslim brother. And unless the hadith or the Quranic verse mentions brother in humanity, then you assume it's brother in iman, in faith, in religion. That's the majority opinion. However, a group of our scholars, including the author himself, Imam Nawawis, and others, from the Hanbalis, it's Najmuddin al-Tufi, for example, says the same thing, that it's not ikhwatul imani, it's not just the brotherhood of faith, wish for your brother that which you wish for yourself, it's ikhwatul insaniya, it's the brotherhood of man. Wish for your brother, meaning your human brother, that which you wish for yourself. And the first thing that you should wish for them, if the second opinion is correct, is that just as you wish that Allah guide you to Islam, alhamdulillah, that He keeps you upon Islam, and that He doesn't let you die except as a Muslim, then the first thing that we need to wish enough for the non-Muslims is to enter into Islam. That's if the second opinion is the right opinion. If the first opinion is the right opinion, which is only for referring to Muslims, then we can still wish for non-Muslims to enter into Islam, but the hadith is more serious towards Muslims than it is non-Muslims. There is no harm in taking the second opinion just at a practical level and trying to live like that practically. It's a bit like saying, is it permissible to backbite, make ghiba of a non-Muslim? Since technically there is an issue, does a non-Muslim, in the legal aqeedah sense, have hurma or sanctity, which makes their honour sacred? And there is a discussion, yes, no. Whether yes or no, what does happen, and I've seen it myself, when you say to some young person, oh yeah, you can backbite the non-Muslims, but it's haram to do that for Muslims. Because the Muslims have a hurma, a sanctity. The blood is sacred, their property is sacred, their honour is sacred, and the non-Muslim doesn't. Then what will very easily happen is when you get used to doing that way, it will quickly spill over that way. Or and you'll have a Jekyll and Hyde character. Right? You'll have a Jekyll and Hyde character. Just like we have a Jekyll and Hyde character. We come into the masjid, no swearing, no this, no that. We are like angels, mashallah. And even though we are in sacred space and we expect to have a higher standard of behaviour in sacred space like a mosque, it's not going to be the same outside. But outside, we don't have to become a devil. We might not have the wings of an angel, but let's at least have the white bit on, some angelic thing, because something of the mosque, the beauty and the barakah in the masjid should have rubbed off on us to go outside. But if I'm like kind of in the masjid, alhamdulillah, assalamu alaikum, yarhamukallah, yahdikumullah, and outside I'm effing and beffing, what's going on? And what happens is that happens when we're really not concerned about inward realities. It's just all external, playing the part, right? It's the Shakespearean part. You go into the mosque and you've got this stage play to do with a particular costume, and outside you're just whoever you are. Islam doesn't countenance that. So the point about is it Muslim or not? Let's just take it to everyone. Let's wish for others what we wish for ourselves from the good. Let us be well-wishers to others. Let's wish that the most ardent, hard and fast, right-wing, racist, EDL, Islamophobic guy, that Allah soften his heart and guide him to the deen. When I was growing up, government health warning here, in those days where if you lived in a housing estate, it was like essential for you to carry, because if you didn't carry like a knife or something, it was illegal obviously. Someone would do you. I remember one day we had to go up to, I can't remember, it was past Luton. It's somewhere near Luton, I can't remember now. And we ran into one of the worst racists in this country. He already had a reputation of stabbing, stabbing, beating up, breaking limbs. And we ran into him in a schism between a group of Asians and a group of racists. And at that time, he had moved on from the NF to Combat 42 or 62, whatever that group was called. Anyway, I think about 6 years ago, or about 7 years ago, I think, someone invited me to join. Some Malaysian brothers invited me to join. I did a talk, and there's this white guy there with a girl. So I assumed that they're non-Muslims, and they're just either here because we're in a gym, right? And they're going to be using the gym after we finish our little talk. I finish my talk. And as I'm talking to the audience, in my mind I'm thinking, oh, I know this guy. But, many years have gone on, 15, 20 years have gone on. At the end, I finished the talk, this guy came up to me, that guy came up to me, and it was his girlfriend, came up to me, the guy said to me, Assalamu alaikum, I said, wa alaikum assalam, what's your name? And I won't say what his name is, because I don't want to give away the whole thing, but let's just say his name was Bilal. Okay, mashallah. And I said to Bilal, do I know you? Have we met before? He goes, you look a bit familiar, but it's likely that you know me more than I know you. So I said, then how would I know you? He goes, I got myself in the newspapers, unfortunately, and a criminal record, unfortunately, back in the 80s, and I said, Combat 42. He said, yeah. He goes, do you remember when we last met? I said, yeah, so and then a little bit of fear in your heart, kind of, because I remember what this guy could do, and now I'm just that close to him, and that wasn't a thing that you would do in those days, okay? And so I kind of, I don't know why, but I asked him again, so you're a Muslim, yeah? Just to get the comfort and the kind of satisfaction, because he goes, alhamdulillah, and I just brought my girlfriend along because I wanted to accept the deen, bro, and blah, 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 so we sat down and whatever. I said, this guy is the guy that we used to curse. If this guy was a guy that we would try to put down. right? There are people that I still run with now, okay, who tried to put a bullet in his head because he was trying to put more than a bullet in their head. Right? And this guy is on the deen. He didn't know much deen because he brings his girlfriend. You wanted to say that you're not really allowed to have a girlfriend. Halal, he's moved from a position to something else. And not that you can make girlfriends halal, but things can have priorities. Things can have priorities. You can delay saying some things and focus on others. But in my life, I have seen a few things like that. All it tells this, this broken creature, this faqir, is that, you know what? Don't give up hope on anybody. My wife, she had an auntie. Does anyone watch Islam Channel?
Yeah.
Right. So there is a program that comes on about 7 o'clock, and it's presented by someone called Brian Jung, a bald-headed guy. Okay, I can't remember the name of the program. Anyway, it comes on every day, and sometimes he's there with a female presenter, sometimes there's a male presenter, then him and other people. Anyway, it's his mother, which is my wife's auntie. So my wife's uncle, younger brother to her father, married a Catholic Irish woman back in the days. And she always kept to be a Christian. And the more that my wife and the family became practicing hijab and then the niqab, the face veil, the more she became anti-Islam. And the more that we now they can't go to those places, we can't have wine at the table, the more she became anti-Islam. And because she was educated, oh my gosh, and she's not a very practicing Catholic, but her anti-Islam would come out a lot. And I remember when I married and I first did a journey with her, I thought, oh, Ya Allah, please save me from her tongue and whatever. But alhamdulillah, she was a polite woman when she wanted to be. She got all of a sudden cancer, and she was given weeks to live. Her grandson, Ryan's oldest, said, Granny, why don't you become a Muslim like all of us? And Allah will give you that joy. And because you're a Christian, Allah will give you 2 years. And she accepted the dawah of her grandson, and she made the shahada. But then she went into an unexpected coma within 3 or 4 days. She was only given 6 weeks to live, but she went into a coma about 4 days after her shahada. Then she woke up after a couple of days, and the first thing she did, she said, is it still time for prayer? And has your grandfather, meaning my husband, done his prayers yet? Has he gone to the mosque yet? That was the first thing that she woke up. And then she died a week later. SubhanAllah. And you wouldn't imagine that this woman would be a Muslim. There is a potential in everybody, even if it takes years or decades. There is no great benefit in being harsh, hard-hearted, cursing. But I tell you what, more than anything, when they see the beauty of Islam practiced on a person, that's more likely to affect people than loads of speech. We Muslims just need to buck up in our practice a little bit more. Not necessarily pray more, that's of course praying more is very good. I'm talking about especially the mu'amalat, the way we conduct ourselves in business. When I give my time, let me try to keep it. It's now become a Muslim truism. When I say to you 8 o'clock, turn up at 9:30. And yet that would never be acceptable in a professional setting. And then we wonder why. That's not just the only example. And look at us. We do get influenced, don't we, by our upbringing. But look, I learned to swear, curse, and whatever, the worst of the non-Muslim behaviour, and I don't learn to be influenced by the better of the non-Muslim behaviour. You've got to be influenced. Why can't I be influenced positively? I knew a brother who converted to Islam, Scottish, stayed with a group of Muslim brothers who weren't very practicing, and within a week he'd learned about 10 swear words in Punjabi. The guy's Scottish, right? And he knows how to swear in Punjabi. So, SubhanAllah. And Punjabi, I hear with the ear and been told by my Punjabi friends, can be so poetic, but it can be so vulgar when it wants to be. It can go to the 2 extremes. Why didn't they teach him some Punjabi poetry, right? And they can, like, wow, you woo you with. You can bungler into the masjid or something. But don't take that seriously. Final thing then, wish for your brother that which you wish for yourself. It also reminds us that let me wish good for you. Let me have a clean heart towards you and wish good for you. And just like Allah has given me some knowledge of the deen, may Allah give you knowledge. Just like Allah has given me some wealth, may Allah give you wealth. That's the kind of feeling. Just like Allah has protected me from this harm, may Allah protect you from that harm. That's how we should have. And it reminds us also that sometimes if I see in my brother, that, oh, subhanAllah, this brother knows more knowledge than I have. This brother has given more charity in this week than I have. Then the Quran says, فَلِذَلِكَ فَلْيَتَنَافَسِ الْمُتَنَافِسُونَ. So for this, let the competitors compete. Meaning for doing good deeds and earning the ajr, the rewards of Allah and the rida of Allah, the pleasure of Allah. Let the competitors compete for this. We compete for others, with others, in good deeds, in a brotherly way. In a brotherly way. And otherwise we wish for our brothers that which we wish for ourselves. Competing, let me end with a story. We've done quite a few stories today. Again in the Sahih collections of Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhum, and I'm sure many of you have heard this. So Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu is Caliph. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu is Khalifa. And Abu Bakr sees this woman, an elderly woman, and he thinks, you know what, I'm going to serve her, make khidmah for her, whatever he has to do in the house. Unbeknown to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Umar radiallahu anhu sees this woman in his own time and says, oh, in his mind he thinks, oh, I'd like to do khidmah to her, to help her, however she needs in the house, maybe, you know, carry the firewood, get some firewood, put it in the house, whatever it be. So one day Umar, early morning, comes knocking on the woman's door and says, I'd just like to, I heard that you need some help and I would like to really help you. And she goes, oh, thank you, young man. I did need help, but another man came earlier today and he did it for me. So I thought, oh, right, okay, it's kind of early. I got it pretty early. You could have done no problem. So next day, he asks the same thing. And the woman says the same thing the next day. And now he's like, what's going on? So Umar radiallahu anhu decided, let me come even earlier than I usually come and see who this man is. And so he's hiding to watch. And lo and behold, it's the caliph. It's Sayyidina, it's our master, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Even though he's caliph, but khidmah, he sees the need. Okay, and this is in the Sahih collection. Because the Islam of such people was there because they wanted to be better human beings connected to Allah. And they wanted to help God's creatures because of this is the way of honouring God. Because Allah created us in a special way. Allah has honoured humanity, not just honoured the Muslims. Honoured humanity just for being human beings, but that honour is not enough for Jannah. Iman is for Jannah. So that gives us a totally different vision. Not a consumerist vision that as long as I get what I want, then who cares about Jannah? This gives us a beautiful vision of how to be a beautiful human being according to the sunnah of the chosen one, of Allah Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. None of you truly believes unless he wishes for his brother that which he wishes for himself. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Salamun ala al-mursaleen. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.